Good evening and welcome back to the Rory Talks Football channel, your daily Arsenal news updates, debates, and my opinions. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. We're on the way to 10,600 subscribers, and smash a like on the video if you can do. I hope you're all doing well. It's a Tuesday, which is just a bit of a fucking meh day, but there's news to talk about, and there's plenty of you here. We're going to talk about Thomas Partey, Aaron Ramsdale, Mikel Arteta's contract, by the way, which is still, not finalized as it stands. We're going to hope that Virgin doesn't absolutely destroy us again whilst we're streaming. And there's also an update on Desiree Doué, which I know some of you are interested in as well. Anyway, Jakob's here, VV Vlad's here, Talent, Pekka, Jakob, Vincent, Hyper Protagonist, Logical Nonsense, George Christodoulou, Icarus, Mark, I'll come back to that comment, Spicy Ramen, Woodsy, Adam, Etherudal, Abu, Devin, Hannah, Max, Magnus, Smithy, Ultra Pro Gamer, Saliba, Oslo Guna, and many, many more. Ian's here as well, and Fizzy. So what if Partey and Ramsdale stay? They are great team players. I don't disagree. And the disappointing thing in the thumbnail, it's not that it would be disappointing if they stay. It's just it would be disappointing. I'll explain it. I think it needs some explaining. But this mainly is coming from Charles Watts, who said Thomas Partey's preference is to stay at Arsenal this summer. However, there have been no talks about a contract extension with the player, who has just 1 year left on his current deal, with a belief that the club will look to move him on this summer. The issue is whether or not Thomas Partey himself will want to move on, or whether he would rather continue to stay at the club, see out the final year of his contract, because, and I want to make sure I get this right, his wages are decent. And the problem is this. Thomas Partey is on 200 grand a week. At his age, with his injury history, he's not going to get 200 grand a week anywhere else, right? I don't know what sort of bonuses he gets on top of that, but base salary, he's on 200 grand a week, which makes him our third highest paid player, I think, behind Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus. It puts him on the same base salary as Bukayo Saka. And so my issue is, if he doesn't want to leave, which he's entitled to, then he stays for a year, he sees out his contract, he leaves on a free. It's another big player that goes for free. And this is where my disappointment is coming from. So maybe in Saudi, maybe he gets the money in Saudi. But again, he's been quite clear before that he doesn't really want to go to Saudi yet at this point in his career. So it's like, if he stays for a year, he takes the rest of his salary, we lose him for free. By going for free, a club in Europe can probably pay him a bit more. If a club can save 20 million in a transfer fee this summer and wait until next summer, they can use some of that money to pay him more anyway. And it's frustrating, because I just think it's another example of us not having the foresight when it comes to selling a player. He's entitled to do it. Look, it's what Cedric spent the last 2 years at least doing. And there's no guarantee that happens. Maybe we do manage to sell him. But I just do think it's a bit frustrating. Now, look, if he stays, then we have to use him in the final year. There's no point there's no point, exiling him from the squad if he stays. I think we use him next season. And look, the best of Thomas Partey is still a very, very good player. The best of Thomas Partey was, very important for us at the end of this season. He came in and our performances were good. So it wouldn't be the end of the world if he did stay. I just think from a sales point of view, it's not ideal. And kind of secondary to that is, I think, what's happening with Aaron Ramsdale. And we heard yesterday from the Daily Mail, I think it was, that Ramsdale, if Arsenal are asking for £30 million, clubs might not go for it. Newcastle wouldn't go for it. And again, I think that is a lack of foresight on our behalf, because we could have sold it. He played, 5 games this season, maybe 6 games this season, on 60 grand a week more than he was on last season. And we've probably lost, if he goes for less than 30 million, we've probably lost 30, £40 million worth of value on that sale in the space of a year. Again, I think that's poor. There's no way that you can look at that. And the reason I say this is because today I've seen some conversations on Twitter with people that I respect, Tim Stillman, for example, saying, I think if we sold Ramsdale for 20 million, that would be fair. 20 fucking million. We taking the piss. And the justification is, well, he's a bench player, so he's lost value. First of all, I think when a goalkeeper becomes a bench player, it's not the same as an outfield player becoming a bench player. If an outfield player is only playing 5 games a season, that means they're nowhere near good enough for the starting 11. If a goalkeeper has been displaced, then it's different because the goalkeeper either plays or they don't. It's not like they can come in for certain games. 199 super chat from Godson. Keeping Partey sets us back a year. Firstly, thank you very, very much for the super chat. And I don't disagree. I don't disagree. In my head of bringing in 2 midfielders, it means that if he stays for a year, we lose Partey and Jorginho next summer anyway. So we lose both of them next summer anyway. You're right. I think to a certain extent it does hold us back by a year. Who would have taken those minutes from Partey this season that would help them ahead of next season? As in this season coming ahead of the season beyond that. But yeah, with Ramsdale, I think it's the same issue. It's like, okay, brilliant. If we can get David Raya in for 27 million, that's excellent business. David Raya for 27 million, great business. But if you've lost 30 million of the value of Ramsdale, then that completely cancels it out. And this season, we've been paying Ramsdale 60 grand a week more than we were paying him last season. So we doubled his salary, which is actually going to make it harder for us to sell him because he's on 120 grand a week when last year he was on 60 grand a week. And I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure that any of that is sensible or the right thing to do. And I do, in a sense, find that disappointing. Now, look, there are ways around it. I think with Partey, fine, you can let him run his contract down, use him for the final season and make sure that you get the absolute maximum value out of that year that you can. And then with Ramsdale, I think you might have to send him on loan. Send him on loan for a year to get his value back up if that's what you've got to do. Because I think selling him for like 20, talking about 25 million for Ramsdale. Absolute joke. Absolute joke. Run the likes up. Yeah, go on. If you could run the likes up, I would be incredibly grateful. We always try and hit 100 likes. On the stream, try and hit 100 likes. I do appreciate it massively. But, and if you look around, and people will say, oh, because he's been benched, that's more than half his value. Even if you look at like Onana, when he moved to United, I'm fairly sure he only had 1 year left on his contract, or maybe 2. But Inter had bought him for free, and then United paid 55 million for him, or 50 million for him. I look at players like James Trafford last summer went for 20 odd million. That's what we're saying Ramsdale's worth. And I don't care if, his value's gone down because we're not using him. His value's still there for the value of the player. And I guarantee you, right? And this is the best example in terms of people saying, oh, but their value goes down when they're not used. Mateus Nunes signed for Man City last summer for 53 million, I think it was. And they're looking at selling him this summer. He spent the entire season on the bench. Never even proved himself in the way that Ramsdale proved himself for Arsenal. You think Man City are going to sell him for about 20 million? No. They'll sell him for 40 million and make a small loss on it. It's just, I think we massively undersell ourselves in the transfer market. And the more we do that, by the way, the worse it becomes. If we sell Ramsdale this summer for 20 million, the summer after that, if we're trying to sell players, clubs look at us like mugs. They go, well, you sold Ramsdale for 20 million. We're not going to buy Fabio Vieira for anything more than 15 million. It's just it's an ongoing cycle that you have a problem with. And I think we've got to nip it in the bud. And I think a lot of it comes to forward planning. The second we decided we were bringing in Raya and probably keeping Raya long term, I think we should have sold Ramsdale last summer, if that was going to be the case. So it's frustrating. Just wait. These bids come in early in the window every year. I have a feeling Arsenal made a promise to Ramsdale because we screwed him. What sort of promise do you think we made? You might be right, but what sort of promise do you think we made? I'm scared we might not do the level of transfer business that can significantly move us up another level. Yeah, I mean, actually, I was just looking at Twitter, and Clive. A lot of you will know who Clive is. He said, a lot of his targets that he wants are kind of young, not necessarily proven, but extremely talented. Your Sescos, your Hatos, your João Neves. And does that align with his ambition, which is he wants Arsenal to win the league next season? And I think it's a great point because I don't think this summer we're bringing in a Declan Rice. I don't think we're bringing in a single player this summer that will walk in and massively lift the level of the team. And again, I think in terms of what we were talking about yesterday with Pep leaving, I think that is because long term, the ambition is still to be ready to pounce when Pep leaves and not going gung-ho this summer to desperately try and win it next season. Look, we all want to win the league next season, but I do still think you have to be preparing yourself longer term than that. Who do we bring in to replace Ramos? There have been a few names mentioned. There's two options, basically. You either go loan move for an experienced sort of veteran goalkeeper, where already I believe we've explored a loan move for Wojciech Szczesny that didn't work because he wants too much money. So you can go down that route, or you can bring in effectively a second choice keeper. So we've been linked to Bilo from Feyenoord. It was at PSV, can't remember which. They're your kind of two options, basically. And then maybe the third is that you promote one of the academy or the youngsters, Karl Hein or whatever, but I don't think that's going to happen. So Jason Steele on loan could be good. I like it. I think that it probably is my preference, honestly, is bringing, even if it's not on loan, bringing in Jason Steele on loan or permanently, I think would not be a bad shout in terms of what we're looking for. But I don't know. Do we need more homegrown players? We're fine. We're fine. Even if we've got Matt Medius, thank you for the 199 super chat. Do you think the Rashford story to Arsenal is false? I don't think it's false. I would imagine conversations are had, right? The start of the window, I can imagine so many conversations are had at the start of the window between clubs, between agents, between, this, that, and the other intermediaries. So a conversation involving Rashford has probably been had. How much further it goes beyond that, I'd imagine not very far. I'd imagine that the second the clubs actually spoke to each other, the valuations of Rashford would be miles away from each other. But yeah, back to that though. And thank you again, Matt, for the 199 super chat. Very generous. Do we need homegrown players or are we fine? I believe we're fine. I can never remember. Is it 7 or 8 that you need? You need 7 or 8 in the squad. David Raya, I believe, counts as homegrown. Ben White, Saliba counts as homegrown. Martinelli counts as homegrown. Saka, Smith Rowe. We're probably going to promote someone like Nwaneri. I mean, you've got Nketiah, you've got Reece Nelson. Obviously, if we sell Smith Rowe, Ramsdale, Nketiah, and Reece Nelson, Declan Rice, obviously. So that's 10. If you sell, we're fine. We're fine. Even if you sell all 4 of those, again, you can just promote a couple of people you can just promote a couple of academy players, even if it means that you list Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly for next season. I think we'd be fine. So I've seen Smith Rowe going on loan. Do you like that move? Not really. Not really. I think you sell. If Smith Rowe goes out on loan and doesn't perform well, his value will never recover. I think you sell him now, you'd still get a decent amount for him. Leave it another year. This is the problem, right? And this is the thing. This is where I think we need to be more ruthless in sales. So, loaning out Smith Rowe, really, truthfully, we've seen, right? Other than Saliba, typically speaking, Arteta doesn't bring players back from loan. Saliba was a very unique example. We've seen it with Patino. We've seen it with Sambi Lokonga. We've seen it with Tavares, with Tierney. You go out on loan, you're not coming back, right? So that problem then is just kicking the can down the road. How good would Smith Rowe's loan move have to be? How well would he have to perform, given that he'd then have a year less on his contract when he came back? the level of performance he'd have to for us to be able to sell him next season for what we can probably sell him for now. I just don't think it's worth it. I think that's what it is. I think it's kicking the can down the road. Same as if we don't sell Vieira. I think that's kicking the can down the road. You know, if you look at Nwaneri long term being the replacement for Ødegaard, and again, Nwaneri scored a great goal for England last night for the under-17s, kind of playing from that Ødegaard position, bit slightly further forward than Ødegaard, but I think that's what we've got to stop doing. Stop kicking the can down the road when it comes to sales. Sell them when you're going to get the... How often do Man City really let a player completely lose his value? I think they've done it with Calvin Phillips. Outside of that, when a player doesn't work out, they shift them. They shift them quickly. I agree. I saw it. Just wanted to see your view on it. Fair. Yeah. What's the minimum you'd accept for Rambo? I mean, 30 is the absolute minimum. And if he's going to a Premier League team, really, 35, 40. I just can't believe it. You know, I saw people today saying that they'd accept 20 million quid for Ramsdale. Taking the piss. If next season, do you know how much it would piss me off next season? Ramsdale playing against us for a Newcastle or whoever else playing against us, knowing that we sold him for 20 million quid and made a loss on him. I can't do it. I can't do that. I can't do that. Do you think Smith Rowe will cook at a lower club? I think he could. I think he'd do well at, you know, even I think he'd do well at Villa. I think he'd do well at Villa. Heaven forbid he'd never go there. I think he'd do well at Spurs. I think he'd do well at Newcastle. I think he'd do well at, you know, he doesn't have to drop down, really. I don't think he does. I saw today that 3 championship clubs, one being Sheffield Wednesday and the other 2 being unnamed, are interested in Beereth, loan maybe. Yeah, there is some interest in Mika Beereth. Obviously, Sturm Graz want him. Don't think they can afford him. Sheffield Wednesday are interested. I assume that would have to be a loan. Sheffield Wednesday aren't going to be able to afford to buy him. I think that's the right move. I think the next move for Mika is a loan move to the Championship. I think that's the right move. Preferably a good Championship team. But yeah, I do think that is the one. Newcastle are taking the piss, saying Isak and Bruno are worth 125 million each and Ramsdale's less than 20. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me whatsoever. Seen the Champions League pots? Yeah, I have. The Champions League pots are pretty irrelevant, though. We spoke about this on, was it yesterday? I think towards the end of yesterday's stream, we ran through the new Champions League format, and the pots are basically irrelevant because you play 2 teams from every pot, regardless of what pot you're in. Sell Nketiah and keep Mika? Yeah. I mean, we sell Nketiah regardless. Nketiah goes. Are you doing the UCL final on Tifo? I will be, yeah. Watch along for the Champions League final Saturday night on Tifo. Links down in the description for Tifo. You know, I keep wanting to say you know the rules, and it's just bloody Bevo. Other news today. This is coming from, I think he's called Pito Sports. It's not a brilliant source, honestly. It's football. He works for Football Insider. It's like a C-tier source, realistically. But he said Mikel Arteta and Arsenal are in advanced talks over a new long-term contract at the club. Negotiations are progressing nicely. So, of course, that is good news to hear. But, you know, I won't hold... Yeah, well, look, I think Arteta is going to sign a new deal. I'd be absolutely shocked if he didn't. But I'll wait to hear it from probably better sources than Pito Sports at Football Insider. But good news nonetheless. Mika Beereth is 21. Seems like this is the last loan move possible. Yeah, it would be. It would be. This would be it. He goes on loan to a Championship club and then we either sell him or integrate him. Beyond that, I think you can't be loaning players out at 22, 23 at that point. You can't be. Don't give Arteta a new contract yet. Come on, Yomi. Come on, Yomi. If we don't give him a new contract now, he's out of contract next summer. So we have to give him a new contract. Partey was compared to Rodri last season. Do you remember that? Also, do you remember said he was maybe... Do you remember... You also said he was maybe better. I thought there were points last season where Partey was performing at a level comparable to Rodri. Yeah, I do. There was a period last season, early in last season, where Partey was performing, he performs differently to Rodri in terms of what he does, but he was performing at a level that was, comparable to Rodri. Bear in mind, Casemiro was also in that conversation last season. Times change, times change quite quickly. But yeah, before Partey had that big injury, I think it wasn't unreasonable to compare him to. Bear in mind that first half of the season we were unbelievable. He was scoring goals. Scored that goal against Spurs at home. Sorry, the season before the season just gone. Yeah, we're in this weird period where, because the season's not technically still. This season technically isn't over, right? Because we've still got the Champions League final. So I refer to it as this season, last season. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. The season, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. The other bit of news today, this has come from Caught Offside. Arsenal, Bayer Leverkusen and Napoli are now the three teams set to step up their interest and ask Rennes about attacking midfielder Desiree Doué in the next few days as they seek to gather information on a potential deal. So Arsenal, Bayer Leverkusen and Napoli supposedly interested in Desiree Doué, which I know a couple of you in the chat were interested in him. Kind of a winger. They've called him an attacking midfielder. He's more of a winger, I think. But there you go. We're supposedly interested in him. But again, that's coming from Caught Offside, which is, not the best source in the world. What do you think happens with City's spot in the Club World Cup if they are found guilty? Good question. I don't know. I don't know what happens to City. I think there will be a lot of ramifications if they're found guilty. Not just within the Premier League, within, UEFA competitions. I think there will be ramifications as well. So it'll be interesting. Fabrizio just tweeted that a Russian keeper is going to PSG for 20 million. Rambo has to be more valuable. Yeah, exactly. What are we doing? It's madness. You've got a young keeper, hasn't even hit prime age, English, was goalkeeper of the season last season. I don't care whether we use him or not. He's still got that value. It's unbelievable. Is Pep confirmed to be leaving after next season? No. Pep isn't confirmed to be leaving after next season. As it stands, his contract is up at the end of next season. There is a feeling, supposedly, that he is going to call time on it then. But equally, he might just wait and see what the outcome of the 115 charges is. And if they get away with it, he might stay. You don't know. It's impossible to know. Rambo's going for 45 million, surely? Nowhere near. We're already hearing that 30 million is deemed too much for him by clubs like Newcastle. Joseph, I can see your comments, yeah, and I apologize if I've missed some of them. You said, would you sign João Neves for 80 million? Yes. I think I'd sign João Neves for 80 million. But apparently his release clause is more than that, significantly more than that, which is a problem. So there's a chance Arteta won't win us anything for a long time. Yeah, there is. There's also a chance that he wins us the Premier League next season. If you think there's someone currently on the managerial market that's got a better chance of winning it than Arteta, okay, we agree to disagree, Omi. Look at the managers that are floating around. You're telling me that there are managers floating around that you'd bring in now. City are rebuilding half of Manchester, and our MPs are having meetings with the owners in the Middle East. No way they get punished. Yeah, probably not. Girona, by the way, who are part of City Group, they've just found a new long-term sponsorship with Etihad. So that is Etihad, that basically has the same owner that owns City Group, has now decided that of all of the teams in La Liga to invest in, they wanted to invest in Girona, the other City Group team. Girona, by the way, partially owned or has a shareholder that is Pep Guardiola's brother. Pep Guardiola's brother is a shareholder in Girona, having never bought any shares, by the way, somehow just ended up being a shareholder in Girona, which happens to be owned by the same people that own Man City, and that the value of Girona will have just massively increased by being sponsored by Etihad. So that's all nice and convenient, isn't it? So when people ask how much is Guardiola getting paid, this, that, and the other, maybe some things go on that aren't just direct payments to Pep Guardiola. Maybe his brother having shares in Girona, maybe that helps. Maybe that's why he's been there for 9 years. But look, we're not allowed to talk about those things because it's salty and bitter. So we'll just leave that and let that we'll just let that float around. We'll just let that float around. Have you seen Arteta watched Atletico versus Real Madrid under 16s? No, I didn't see that. Interesting there. Interesting. Problem with Ramsdale is we're getting his upgrade for 27 million, and clubs will use that against us. Probably will end up with like 20 plus 5 million in add-ons. Yeah, but that's just because we've done a very good deal. There were clubs offering more than 27 million for David Raya, by the way. There were clubs that offered like 40 million for him. He just didn't want to go to them. So Ramsdale might be undervalued, but I can't think of any goalkeeper in his situation that went for big bucks. Clubs value starters, especially at goalkeeper position, and everyone knows we want to sell him. No, I get that part of the argument. And I agree. I think that probably is why he's not going to go for much money. My frustration more so is that Arsenal didn't prepare for this. It's another player that Arsenal didn't prepare to sell and didn't sell at the right time. That's the issue that I've got left. Raya had 1 year left. Yeah. Raya had 1 year left and wanted to go, and they still got 27 million for him. So if Ramsdale gets sold for less than 30 million, I'll be extremely disappointed. Yeah, I think a lot of people will. Could we loan him out to increase value? Possibly. That's the only other solution is. But then even if you do that, you loan him out, everyone knows how good Ramsdale is. It's not like people aren't going to spend the money because they don't know how much he's worth. They know how good he is. I don't think him going on loan would prove that he's so much better. And in actual fact, it could work against him. Because if he went on loan to a team with a bad defense and he concedes a lot more goals, people will just run the narrative that he only kept a lot of clean sheets at Arsenal because of the defense in front of him. So it could go the other way. And it still doesn't change the fact that when he comes back from that loan, he's still in the same position that he's in now of not being the first choice keeper. And I think that's the thing that's pulling his valuation down. So they've gone after Mark Goldbridge. If you're talking about City, they never went after Mark Goldbridge. That was a myth. That was a myth. Plus, everything I just said is completely publicly available information. So no problem. 80 million for Ramsdale. He actually cooked last season. And Ketia also cooked Man United last season, so at least 40 million for him. Yeah, I mean, we might be getting slightly carried away there. But no, I reckon if you sold Ramsdale, how much would Ramsdale have gone for last summer before we had bought Raya in? If clubs were coming in and looking for Ramsdale, 60, 70 million. So that means that you've lost that value. And people don't look at it that way. People won't look at it. They'll say, "Oh, well, we made the money back on Ramsdale." They won't look at it as the opportunity cost of what you could have made on him if you'd had if you'd been forward thinking enough. So yeah, it's tough. 40 to 50, 45, maybe 40. Let's be real, he was never that good. I mean, he was by and large, he was valued as the most valuable goalkeeper in the world, according to Transfer Market. He won Goalkeeper of the Year in the Premier League. You know, he made mistakes, of course, but every keeper does. We'll see when clubs get desperate by the end of the window. That's the other thing you do. That's the other thing. But the issue with that is, okay, you wait until the end of the window. You hope that a club gets desperate for him so that you can try and get an extra 5 or 10 million. What if a club never gets desperate for him? And then you end up maybe stuck with him for another year, at which point he's been not playing for 2 years. That's another risk. That's another risk is the problem with that. Did you see that Man United could potentially be forced to give their Europa League spot to Chelsea and take the Conference League spot due to Ineos ownership of Nice? I did see that. I've got a feeling it's a bit clickbaity. I think it's a bit clickbaity. So the rule is you can't have 2 majority owners with 2 clubs in the same competition, right? And Ineos own Nice, and Nice finished in Europa League spots in Ligue 1, and they finished higher up in their league than United did in the Premier League. Obviously, United never even qualified for the Europa League initially. So in theory, they wouldn't be able to have both of them. But to be qualified as a majority owner, or their qualification of a significant owner, is owning 30% or more of the club. Ineos only own 27% of Manchester United. So I think they're actually going to be fine. I think they're going to be fine. Girona's playing Champions League. Yeah, again, I don't actually know what's happening with that. I'm not entirely sure what's happening with that either. But I think City have to give up like all sporting control. Like City Group have to give up all sporting control or something. They'll get their own way. The reality is they'll get their own way. That's the truth of it. This idea that Ramsdale's not a good goalie is hilarious to me and shows how ridiculous sports conversations have gotten. I agree. I think he's an excellent goalkeeper. They were going to invest 225 million apparently. Yeah, so it might delay that. That might be the one thing they have to do is they were planning on buying more. They might have to delay that by a season and hope that United and Nice aren't in the same competition the season after that. Ineos hold control of all the footballing side. I don't know if that means something. I think it does mean something. I don't know. Apparently, they've got until Monday anyway. Ineos have until Monday to sort it out with UEFA. So we'll see. What do you mean? He got Goalkeeper of the Year? In one of the awards, in one of the Premier League awards, he was given goalkeeper. He was awarded Goalkeeper of the Year. I think it was like maybe the Premier League fan voted team of the season or something. I can't remember which one, but I remember him getting Goalkeeper of the Year. Kepa was bought for 80 million by Chelsea. Yeah, exactly. Speaks for itself. Loan Ramsdale to Southampton if we can't get 30 million. But to what end? Like loaning Ramsdale to Southampton. To what end? Are you on Instagram? I am on Instagram, yeah. Same username. RoryTalksFootball. Noosa would be legit. Erdegaard and Noosa connection. Maybe. I've not seen a huge amount of Noosa, to be honest. I've not seen a huge amount. What do you think of Tchouaméni? Apparently he's unhappy with Madrid. I mean, Tchouaméni's fantastic, but I'm not sure what he's unhappy with, to be fair. I don't know. Surely he's going to become surely Tchouaméni's just like a fundamental part of their team next season, though, right? Without Toni Kroos, with Modric being a bench option, surely Tchouaméni just starts in midfield. I'm not sure. Are we selling Matt Turner this summer? We sold him last summer. We already sold Matty Turner. What's the news about Partey? His preference is to stay at Arsenal this summer. He's out of contract next summer. He doesn't want to move, but the club are going to try and look for a move, basically. He was in the PFA Team of the Year. There you go. Yeah, he was in the PFA Team of the Year. That's what I'm saying. Only if Pickford gets injured and Rambo plays well in the Euros to increase his value. Yeah, I mean, that would help, but again, it would rely on Pickford. By the way, even if Pickford got injured, wouldn't be incredibly surprised if they went with Dean Henderson. Even if he got injured. Excuse me. Is it only me who thinks Germany are going to cook at the Euros? Neuer, Schlotterbeck, Rudiger, Kimmich, Musiala, Wirtz, Havertz, Sane. Yeah, it's a nice team. It is a nice team. I think they'll do well. Fullbacks, I think they struggle for fullbacks looking at their squad. If they're going to struggle in an area, I think it's that. But I think they'll do well. Anyway, it is time for Guess the Gooner, the game where I give you 5 clues about an ex or current Arsenal player, and you have to guess who that player is in the chat. First person to get it right wins the immense pride and respect of the Rory Talks football community. Get your fingers on your keyboards because we're starting now. Clue number 1. This player is 37 years old. Clue number 2. They currently manage in Italy. Clue number 3. Clue number 3. They joined Arsenal in 2003. Clue number 3. They joined Arsenal in 2000. Clue number 4. They scored 57 goals in 303 games for Arsenal. They scored 57 goals in 303 games for Arsenal. And clue number 5, they've won the World Cup, 2 Euros, the Premier League, La Liga, and Europa League. They've won the World Cup, 2 Euros, Premier League, La Liga, and Europa League. Plenty of you got that quickly. Impressively quickly, to be quite honest. But the first person to get it right was... there you go. It was Ethan Udall. Ethan Udall. It was indeed Cesc Fabregas. And Ethan got it right. Congratulations to Ethan. Second was... Oscar was second. Amar was third. George Christodoulou was fourth. And Magnus was fifth. So there you go. Congratulations to Ethan. It was a relatively easy one. It was a relatively easy one. There you go. That is 2 days in a row. I forgot about that. Ethan has done the back-to-back. Unbelievable performance from Ethan Udall. We must copy whatever Ethan Udall says. I mean, it's impressive. It's impressive. Can you say Schlotterbeck again? I can indeed. Schlotterbeck. There you go. Congratulations to Ethan Udall. Now it's time for Guess the Non-Gooner. I'm going to give you the entire career path of a player who does not and has not played for Arsenal. You have to guess who that player is in the chat. First person to get it right wins the immense pride and respect of the Rory Talks Football community, but not as much respect as Ethan Udall currently has. Yeah, he's manager of Como. Manager of Como. So there you go. Right, this player started their career at PSG. They went through the PSG Academy. Started at PSG. They went to Juventus. They went on loan to Bayern Munich. And they joined Bayern Munich permanently. PSG, Juventus, Bayern Munich on loan, Bayern Munich permanently. A nice short one. A nice short one. Who got it first, though? That's the question. Who got it first? And the answer is Oscar. Oscar was first. Francesco was second. Those two were clear, to be fair. Francesco's unlucky. It looks like his came just after Oscar's. Carl was third. Theo was fourth. And George Christodoulou was fifth. So there you go. Oscar with a second in Guess the Gooner and first in Guess the Non-Gooner. Good day for him. A good day at the office for Oscar. But there you go. Congratulations, Ethan. Congratulations, Oscar. Very good. Very good. No, Francesco, I'm sorry, you're not. You're not. I even knew that you'd think you were first. I promise you. I promise you. On my screen, Francesco, you are the message. Look, you are the message below. You are the message below, Oscar. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Your internet's let you down. Your internet's let you down. I don't know where Oscar's from, but it took less time for his message to get to me than it did for yours. Tight offside, good process. VAR's confirmed it. Goal given to Oscar. I'm sorry, Francesco. I'm sorry. We sent Tierney and Tavares out on loan and it decreased their value, so sending Ramsdale out on loan isn't guaranteed to increase its value. Generally speaking, sending players out on loan doesn't increase their value unless they're academy players. That's the reality. Unless they're academy players, sending players out on loan just doesn't increase their value because it's already a player that you're happy to let out on loan. It's already a player that the world knows isn't good enough for your squad. If they go out and perform incredibly well on loan, you're going to want to keep them. If they don't and you're still willing to sell them, then that's 2 years of them not being good enough for your squad. It just doesn't often work. It doesn't often work. So there you go. Anyway, look, that is going to be the end of the stream. I massively appreciate all of you joining, as always. I'm going to be live on Twitch later, as normal, about 10:15. So you can get to that using the link in the description over on Twitch. But other than that, I'll be back live tomorrow night. I hope you all have a fantastic evening. We're nearly halfway through the week, kind of. And yeah, I will catch you tomorrow. Goodbye.